Hello and welcome back to Behind the Faders, the live sound channel. Today I want to talk about something which often plays a role in my coaching calls, and this is about vocals. Vocals, and especially of course the lead vocal, is most of the time the most important signal that we're working with. So it needs the most amount of attention, right? And I'm sure you've all seen videos on YouTube where sound engineers of famous and successful bands run you through their gear. And very often they will have a really elaborate vocal chain, even including some outboard gear like valve compressors or channel strips or whatever. So if you are working with a band and you get to know the voice, you will try to improve it over time, make it a little bit better every show, which is totally fine, as long as you don't overdo it and are not just driven by playful experimentation. A good story about this is a few years ago I was doing a festival and one of the headliners was Joe Cocker, may he rest in peace. This was about 2010 or so. And I remembered Joe Cocker from way back in the 90s, in the analog days, having a fantastic front of house sound because he had a great band and he was mixed by a guy called Dave Natal, who was one of the world champions of live sound mixing. So I expected a lot from this. And that guy brought a DigiDesign desk. And those were the days before wave racks and wave service, or real-time racks and all these platforms for external plugins. So any other desk you would have the onboard tools, plus maybe if you wanted to add some outboard. But the DigiDesign desk was the only desk that allowed for third-party plugins because it's obviously the same company, which is now Avid, that makes Pro Tools. So with that desk, you had all the Pro Tools plugins available. And when the soundcheck started and Joe started singing, it sounded horrible. His voice was just an alien, phasey mess. But after the soundcheck, I acted like I was impressed, so the guy would show me his chain. And he had stacked like I don't know how many plugins on that vocal. And I just released a short about how important it is to learn to detect phasing issues and separate them from EQing problems, because you can't EQ phasing issues. And that guy clearly didn't know how to hear that. It was all phasey, so he overdid it. So the claim we hear very often in YouTube videos or wherever, the vocal is the most important part in our mix, so it will need the most amount of attention, which means it will need the most amount of processing. So if you deal with vocals, you have to apply not only EQ, but compression and de-essing and maybe harmonizing and reverb and delay and God knows what other plugins are out there that you can apply to your vocal chain. And you need to do that because it's so important. I'm exaggerating that a bit, but that's kind of the point that many people make. So that is a sound engineer's point of view. But let's switch to audience perspective and ask ourselves, what about it is so important? And yes, the audience will say it's the most important signal. That's what I want to hear the clearest and the best. So I want it to be loud enough. And I want, depending on the genre, of course, but I want some intelligibility. That's the two things that they want. They want it loud and clear and easy to understand. That's it. Nobody will say, I expect the most polished, shiny vocal sound in the world. So, like I said, if you're working with a band over time, you will try to improve your vocal sound, no doubt about that. But what if you don't know what you're up to? So your local engineer, the band comes in. And now you still, because everybody tells you so, have prepared well, of course an EQ, but a compressor and a de-esser, and maybe a multiband compressor and reverb and delay and whatever else you have in your toolbox. But what is the easiest way to make a vocal loud and clear? Do nothing to it. Well, of course, a low cut, which usually I set up during the sound check in solo and listen when the low cut takes effect on the actual signal and then back it off a little. And you will most likely find a bit of a problem in the low mid somewhere and you take that out. Everything else I would leave in until I hear the entire band playing and I know how the vocal sits in the mix and how easily I can get it up to volume. Because only if I can get it up to volume easily and have some headroom, now's the time to apply some compression. But I made a video about what compression can do to your vocal if you overdo it. I'll link it in the description, of course. So I would introduce compression carefully and slowly and see what it does. The problem here is that you will maybe get to tame the vocals a little bit, but compression is not nearly capable of controlling the whole dynamic of a vocal. So what do? You write the fader, like we always did. You have the finger on the fader the entire time, and then you write it. Of course, if you don't know the singer and you don't know the songs, that makes it more difficult, and it needs a lot of focus to do this. But it still helps, it's still possible, and in my mind, that's part of your job. Write the fader. A compressor will only get you that far. De-essing, well, it's a bit of a taste thing. Some people hate S's so much, they always will use a de-esser. But then again, in a dense mix, an S that is a little bit sharp can even help to understand the lyrics in a way. So that's really case by case decision. I mean, you can always prepare a de-esser and then introduce it if you really think it's necessary. Any harmonizing, thickening thing, you should be really careful because what these plugins do, or this effect does, it's messing with the phase. And if you're messing with the phase, it will set back the vocal. It will be less understandable. It will be less direct. So, and it sounds weird from a point on. I remember many years ago, I was on a festival and Aerosmith was playing. And Steven Tyler's voice was like 50% voice and 50% harmonizer. And maybe it was just the taste of the sound engineer, but it sounded very weird. So be careful if you use any of these plugins. Multiband compression, well, you need to know a voice pretty well to be able to use that to your benefit. So I wouldn't even prepare it for a band I don't know. When it comes to reverb, for the lead vocal, you need a long pre-delay, longer than 30 milliseconds. So you really have the dry voice first and then the reverb comes. So this way you build a room around it without the voice appearing very far away from you. Delay depends. If you have like a rockabilly act, then you might want to use this slap delay. So it's a very short delay of like 50 milliseconds or so. The usual use of a delay is you're prepared and you tap the tempo in of each song when it starts, and then you try to capture certain phrases or the last word of a line, stuff like that, which again is not so easy if you don't know the songs. Oh, and again, don't forget to send back the delay into the reverb. And last but not least, a word about backing vocals. What I always will do with backing vocals, I will give them a severe high cut because I don't want all the S's and T's and F's and whatever it is from 4 different sources. I want them from my lead vocal and the backing vocals will have a high cut that doesn't let these sounds through. Of course, if any of the backing vocalists will make announcement in between songs or have a solo part, then you will have to bypass that EQ, or at least that high cut. Other than that, it helps. Try it. And for the reverb, then for the backing vocals, I will use a reverb with very little or even no pre-delay, because I want them to appear further back than my lead vocal. And that's pretty much it for today. If you have comments and questions, leave them in the comment. If you have a lot of questions, then consider booking yourself a coaching call. They come at 15 or 30 or 60 minutes and kind of anything in between. And if you haven't already, please take a second and click that subscribe bell, because it's just a click for you. It doesn't cost you anything. It's really helpful for me. See you next time. Bye-bye.